tonight. That is a discussion. That is a discussion about the Schenectady Police Department's complaint packet. Before we begin, Ms. Michael has an announcement.
Okay, so the press release was sent by email to all council members, mayor, and corporation council on Wednesday, June 4th. It states, press release, Schenectady City Council to hold a special public safety meeting Monday, June 9th at 2 p.m. where City Hall, Room 110, details Schenectady City Council will hold a public special safety committee meeting to discuss updates to the Schenectady Police Department's complaint packet to support ease of use, greater transparency, and fairness through clear and neutral languages, and to whom is directed to the Schenectady City Council Public Safety Committee.
Thank you. So I need to have a very intentional 60 minutes or 59 at this point. Just wanted to look at some items of the current complaint packet from the police department. Captain Mallard, I think at this point you can come and sit at the table with us. And then Ms. Palmieri for reference. I would say just as you're called, you can come up and then use the mic. So just for clarity, I was brought into wanting to reevaluate the complaint form just due to a member of our community having filled out a packet for a resident, and then them identifying that there were just some improved areas that they would like to see addressed. It was at that time I reached out to Ms. Palmieri, who's the current chair for the CPRB, and in a virtual discussion, we identified some other areas, but in wanting to respect the opinions of the Public Safety Committee and then not being able to direct any changes myself just because I'm one of 7. I was wanting to have a broader conversation around the context of our suggestions. Captain Mallard did receive a listing of this today. If we can kind of start at the top, just the inclusion of the social security number, that was one that kind of puzzled all of us. I wanted to just go down this list and see if there are any considerations you can make, or if there are any reasons beyond our current context. Because again, this is to work more collaboratively with having transparent language and not assuming that things are just kind of thrown in. Yeah. So I'm sorry, Mr. Torres. Wow.
That's okay. That's okay. I just have a quick question before we start. I just was wondering, at some point during the meeting, can you just go through like what the revisions are from the previous form?
So you mean
or is it just is it the list that we did get that you're about to just start on?
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Great. Okay,
and
thank you.
Unless
Sorry.
anyone at the table had any kind of conversations,
No.
and if this does turn into a broader conversation, we can definitely pause that.
Okay. Thank you.
So if everyone's in agreement, just starting with the social security number inclusion.
So the first one, on the packet that we normally pass out, it's not on there. That was on the original unedited PDF copy that the records department had for some reason. Okay. So at some point in its existence, that was already taken off. So that's already been addressed. So we'll just have to ensure that the original PDF copy at the police department has it removed, because essentially there is no reason for that as far as I'm concerned. Pardon me.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. The second of which was the employer information. Not that anyone's in disagreement, making that field optional, just having like an optional designation, if that's an agreement. The next was reconfiguring the placement of the complaint received by section. It was discussed as potentially having an administrative or office only section towards the bottom of the page, just so it was clearly outlined that these components aren't for you to fill out. They're still vital to be documented on the packet. Just putting it towards the end maybe reads a little bit more clearly. Ms. Palmieri, does that sound about right?
Yeah, so for like office use only or something?
Oh, yes, sir. next component, which I imagine we'll have some conversation, removing the complaint initial sections. Part of the discussion was how easily that message is conveyed, and the discussions transition more to, can we have language at the beginning, just identifying what language preference do you need, and then having it clearly outlined how to seek out assistance for filling the packet out. And I'm a member of a lot of different organizations, as I know other people are at the table, not just here right now, just in totality. Potentially identifying some organizations that can help with people filling it out.
Would there be someone here at City Hall or that would be helping with that, or?
I don't know. I didn't want to assume city clerk's office could assist with that. I just know that
Just for convenience.
mainly people will reach out to someone that they know or someone you feel comfortable with discussing this matter with and just asking for their assistance. I know at the NAACP we've received some complaints in the past and trying to remain objective and providing them other options rather than myself or Ms. Porterfield. But I definitely know the help is out there. It's just potentially tapping into that so people have this when they open it rather than having to know off the top of your head.
So speaking to that, there are specific organizations that they can file these reports with, right? The complaints with the police department, the NAACP, other organizations.
Yes.
So we could see if those organizations could make available, not necessarily through their organization, but through their connections, to make sure that people have an opportunity for someone to help them interpretation if they need that.
Will do. Thank you.
In the event that it's a third party's completed this for someone that doesn't speak English and we need to speak to them, we have a language service that we contract with at the police department for a variety of reasons. And we've had them come in and interpret what the actual complaint has been. So we do that with criminal and internal complaints.
Do you also do that with an online service? I know some doctor's offices, if you go to the doctor, they'll bring up that service and there'll be a person there. Do you do it virtually as well, or only with person in person? Only in person?
It can be virtual, yes. Yeah, it depends on what language it is. If it's a rare language not commonly spoken around here, it can be virtual where we make a secure WebEx and speak to the person. That's only been in criminal cases that I'm familiar with, though, not any complaints that have come in about police officers.
Thank you.
And there's definitely a language component, but not trying to jump around too much. So moving down to the removing the notary requirement, having a simpler affirmation. I can definitely say for myself, it definitely reads very lawfully, like if I fabricate any information or that I can prosecute it. And I think to someone that's filling out a complaint packet, it may inadvertently deter someone from wanting to step forward. I can reference my time on the CPRB. There's definitely instances where you're like, definitely speak about that completely was not how the incident took place. But our discussion virtually landed on, could we have someone maybe attest to filling out the complaint packets to the best of their knowledge? And I think that takes into consideration like the emotional or just psychological state that they might be in, which might not necessarily convey trying to blatantly lie, but it could just be based on their view of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in the past we've had ones that are completely inaccurate, fabricated to some degree, especially with the addition of the body-worn camera footage. It's pretty clear how the scenario occurred, but we haven't we haven't prosecuted anyone for filing the false complaints. And I should add too, this complaint typically isn't completely filled out. We take complaints, if you just put your name and number, we'll call you back to get an actual description of what occurred. So generally speaking, these aren't ever completely filled out. There's a lot of blanks left in them. Carl, obviously you've seen a lot of the packets come through, so.
And I think a lesser known fact is every complaint, regardless of its completeness, is reviewed to the best of your
Yeah, whether it's social media, phone calls, complaints to the mayor's office, we follow up on them.
And I think that's a reflection of taking every complaint seriously. So I think broader conversation, not for this discussion, is how do we ensure the community understands the links that are gone through to ensure that every complaint made is given its time and due diligence. But back to that discussion item, just wanted to maybe have lighter language, open it up for discussion. Wanted to make sure we not encourage complaints, but I think Chief Clifford also understands the value of having complaints as a reflection of how your services are felt by the community members, and not wanting to have language that might deter someone from doing that. Ms. Porterfield?
So, the current form, is this how it currently is, where your people actually have to go to a notary and swear it? That's how it's been?
That's how it reads, but no one ever gets it. No one ever does that.
That's what that was my question. Do you
No,
ever get them
no one does.
notarized?
Yeah, and we still investigate it.
So the question, they do not notarize it, they just turn it in and you accept it without the notarization?
Correct.
Without it being notarized?
Correct.
Okay. So then it's not like really needed because people aren't doing it.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Ms. Patrick?
So if we remove this, though, will there still be someplace the statement that they've been informed that knowing and making a false statement is punishable? Would that statement still be somewhere in the packet? So maybe they're not getting it notarized, but they still would know that if they were making a false statement that it's a Class A misdemeanor, or?
Cheers.
Do you want to come up and share your comments?
Our discussion.
You just need the microphone.
Is this too up there?
Yeah, because it's just,
Sorry. At the CPRB level, we had discussed this before, and it was making an affirmation statement, more or less, rather than a notarized statement. Just putting someone on the record of, I affirm this is true to the best of my knowledge and ability, as opposed to going to search for a notary.
Thank you.
And I think within that context, Captain Mao, do you feel comfortable that that still leaves all those options available to you?
Yeah, I mean, I still think we should have the canned, what's on all of our paperwork, that it's punishable, a Class A misdemeanor if you make a false statement. I think that's important still to have, because that is correct, and we have it on all our documents.
Ms. Patrick?
Mr. Williams, I think that that's appropriate, because we also don't want someone to then say, well, you didn't tell me that it was going to be, let's say somebody doesn't tell the truth, and then we do charge them with Class A misdemeanor, what's to stop them from saying, well, you never told me that was going to happen? I don't know, I mean, maybe Corporation Counsel could give an opinion, but it feels like it would be harder to prosecute that.
The City Code 93-13B, complaint forms should include a statement that the filing of a complaint is not a bar to filing a lawsuit for injury or damages, nor a bar to prosecution for perjury or filing a false statement. So that section should remain in my opinion.
Okay. So I think that's fine, and then including a amended version of that replaces the notary standpoint. Is that agreed upon? Or as of now?
So so take out the notary, but leave in the fact that if they make a false statement, it is prosecutable. So, do you still want to add, I attest to, you want that language in
Yes,
there?
I would say
And then to also say, and if you don't tell the truth, this is what's
the
happening.
consequences.
Okay.
The next item, which you briefly spoke about, Captain Mallard, was the affirmation, the language. I definitely know as forms are making their way around the internet, there are certain services where you're able to put it into a number of different languages. I often don't like referencing the Albany CPRB's packet because I think we're different municipalities with different objectives with these forms, but they do have that option to do that. Do do you know if we possess the capacity? Or if we can just simply have a truly English and a truly Spanish version. We talked about in our virtual meeting, we talked about the difficulties in having mixed and wanting to have true reflections of those prominent languages. Or do we have the capacity to have a form that's responsive to the tens of hundreds of languages available?
I mean, so we're, not to jump around, but we do have a Spanish version available. It's just in the editing phase, and it's got to be assigned a form number, and then we'll release it, but we're going to have to make some edits, obviously, with the changes that we're doing today. And then, as far as an online one, we did look at a company that had it available in 50 different languages. Axon is our primary supplier for forms and stuff like that. I do think that they're working on online reporting, but it's in its infancy, just as far as I know. So that would be a work in progress. One that we looked at, we could do police reports, accident reports in 50 different languages. But we don't have that one. It's very, very expensive.
Okay. Definitely cost comes into assessment. Mr. Mayor?
But again, if somebody's making a complaint, we're going to follow up on it. So if there is a language barrier, we're going to work through it, whether it's the formal packet that's going to the review board, or it's just going to be internally reviewed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Porter?
Yeah, I think that, I know we always talk about languages and we always say English and Spanish, but quite frankly, in the city of Schenectady, there's many other languages being spoken now.
Right.
So if we're considering that, even creating forms in other languages, I think that we should take a look at the languages that are most predominantly spoken here now and maybe include it. I know we started with English and Spanish a lot, but I know there's people who speak from a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, and Arabic is another language that people speak a lot of. It was taught in the city school district at one time. I don't know if they're still doing that. So I think we should look at what the predominant languages are being spoken here and see if we can at least have forms or a way to translate the forms or into those languages. So we're considering that.
But Carl, Mr. Williams, I do think the statement, if English is not your preferred language, please indicate the preferred language at the beginning of the form would be a good idea.
Great. I think to your earlier point, every form is evaluated, so I think as we can capture that at the beginning. And I also think to Ms. Porterfield's point, if we have the top three, definitely having that burden be on the department to translate that form is, I think, unreasonable. But I do know there are organizations out there that would happily seek or be willing to assist. Moving to the next component is adding a page for assistance or information available. I think that's just wanting to identify for someone that is either receiving this by secondhand or just going on the website, how do we easily outline how to get resources? Was the intent with that conversation? I don't know if you want to add anything to this. Or including a statement at the beginning that every form, regardless of how complete it's filled out, will be investigated. That could be a catch-all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could find some translation services that we could put in. But once again, if there's an actual complaint, we'll have them come in. We have a program that we use already, so we would be able to understand what they were saying at some point.
Correct. So maybe at the beginning, having just simple sentence, just every complaint is filled, not putting words in your mouth, but I think that would help just convey, I don't need to spend days and nights trying to figure this out. I can just figure it out to the best of my ability, and then once received, I'll hear back from the department.
I think that is sort of in the cover letter here.
Yeah.
It says once your complaint is filed, it will be investigated by the office. So we could either strengthen that sentence, but I mean, basically, I think that sentence is saying that every, the complaint is going to be investigated. What do you think?
I like strengthening, but definitely if it's already there, it's just trying to ensure that the way we're reading it, can it be interpreted any other way? And if it's a yes, that's how it can be responsive. But I think just having this discussion overall is good, and the totality of these changes, I think, makes this form more transparent. last conversation was what I feel comfortable identifying is just community outreach has not been up to par, and I think the current chair will attest to that. Definitely the organizations that are sitting representatives, it's a shared accountability of ensuring that the complaints that are filed, the redacted information is given back so that the circulating narrative in the city isn't there's no authority with the CPRB or no complaints are truly being investigated, which very much is false. But if there's no counter to what's currently circulating, I think we're not doing the police department of justice. So I did hear of efforts, and I'm excited to make the effort to be at the next meeting, which should be this Wednesday. They had discussions about making a logo and then wanted to have some tablecloths and pamphlets just so they could be more forward-facing in the community. I think that would be an absolute amazing step for the CPRB so that they can just meet a lot of the revolving narrative that there is no power with having the authority and not feeling the need to use it, which I think more accurately identifies how they currently function. So I don't know if you were in agreement with that or had any comments.
No, I think that it's good that they're doing outreach. You know, certainly, you know, we spend a lot of time investigating these complaints. Obviously, everyone can't be aware of the findings. It would be good to have, you know, a cheerleader for the process and know that the complaints are being investigated and officers who violate procedure and policies are being held accountable.
So unless there are any additional questions or concerns, I think that was probably the most efficient meeting I've been a part of in a while. Sincerely, thank you for your time, Captain Mano. Thank you for being here.
I just want to say, I think, again, on that note, though, we do have to make sure, I mean, I think we put $500 in the budget last year for the CPRB. I can't remember.
1,500.
If that was what it was.
Was it 5,000?
5,000?
5,000.
Oh, okay, then that should
And
cover the
we sent-
tablecloth.
we sent members
Is that the conference?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
$5,000 was allotted for the CPRB in the budget, and in which we have sent members to NACOL, to the
Yes.
National Association, for the Conference for Education and Training.
Thank you. Ms. Walker?
So, Ms. Patrick, were you thinking other, the 5,000 would be used for other things in relation to this forum?
No, I was just looking at that piece about the tablecloth, the pamphlets, and other merchandise.
So-
that
so yes.
That would have to be then included in that $5,000, it seems, then.
It is, will be correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I think as they come out of their meeting tonight, Ms. Palmetier was scheduled to come to our next committee meeting to do a presentation. I don't think she necessarily has to at this point.
Well, my thought about that is that the other council members aren't here. Maybe that would be a good idea to
So I
have.
agree to, okay. If you're, or we can talk about your scheduling. But I think sincerely just wanting to see that logo and see how we can be more assistive and getting that pushed through and discussing just getting some marketing information. Because I do know we have a lot of events and a lot of people have had questions about the CPRB. So it's good to know these actions are taking place or being considered. So sincerely, if you have no other questions, Ms. Porterfield.
So, my question is, so what are the next steps from after this meeting?
So I can compile my notes, send it to everyone to make sure they accurately reflect this conversation, and then send them over to the police department. The hope with having this meeting was to expedite those. So it's good to know that they were just in the edited version, but wanting to make sure we get this to the public as soon as possible, just so there are no extended delays with people who have complaints that they'd like to fill out.
Did you have a timeline on your form that you were trying to get it done by?
I mean, as soon as possible. It's just we're just adding to form number 2 and just doing some editing. The Detective Quinones, he's one of our detectives in the detective division. I can't speak today, sorry. He's bilingual, so he was doing the translation for us. So for Spanish.
Thank you.
Thank you. So without further ado, if I can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, guys.